When I'm not listening to the Big Sexy Digital Nomad podcast, I'm sad. What helps? Cruising. My name is Bill and I run Cruise Habit, a YouTube channel and website about cruising. Sometimes I'm vacationing, sometimes I'm doing the digital nomad thing from a ship, but whenever possible, I am cruising, or at least talking about cruising. I've got tips, tours, and more information to make sure you take the right cruise for you. Check out the channel and site by visiting cruisehabit.com/BSDN. That's cruisehabit.com/BSDN.
What is going on, friends? Get out here with Judge Mentalist coming at you with another episode of Big Sexy Digital Nomad. This one, you're going to have a love-hate relationship with. Yep, you might be on the side where you absolutely love what we're going to talk about in this episode. You may be bored to tears with it. Only time will tell, but I'll give you the little spoiler alert that if you hate the sports ball, you might be on the wrong side of this one. What's going on, Big Sexy? How are you?
What's up, man? Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Whenever this is hitting your ear holes, I hope that it is good. Believe since this is going to be a bank episode, we're trying to figure out what we wanted to talk about, what things we wanted to chat about. And one thing that has come up that people have inquired about and that we kind of touched on here and there, but haven't really dove into, is the sports ball nature of one of your careers. You are a multi-careered individual, and sports ball is intricate in at least one of them.
Yeah. Honestly, I get this question a lot because it's not something that, I don't lead with this. I don't bring this up too much, but it does certainly come up in the topic of some conversations from time to time. And, I guess I'll just, we talked about it a couple of episodes before about eventually we would dedicate an episode to getting into the weeds and digging into what this is. That way, for those who are interested, the questions get answered and I can kind of give a comprehensive rundown of what it is, what it isn't, why you should never do it, et cetera, et cetera. And for those who have absolutely no interest in it, rest assured that until probably the end of this episode, this is all we're talking about. So if you want to listen to this on double speed because you don't care about the sports ball, you've kind of gotten that heads up.
It'll be where I'm in the middle when it comes to sports ball. Like I used to be big in it, and then I'm not so much anymore. So I will definitely be providing some color commentary as we go through this.
So I was big in it. I never played. This is specifically. I am a certified NFL agent. There are 800 and some of these individuals that exist in the world. I'm assuming just in the U.S., but I don't think there's anything that precludes anybody from being international. It just probably wouldn't make a ton of sense, right? Because the league is here and the players are here and all of the things are here. But there's 800 and some. That number fluctuates, but it never really dips below 800. I've seen it ever hit 900. And it's a hell of a process to become an NFL agent. So this whole thing started by accident some years ago. I've been an attorney, and I think that's something that we have talked more about. I run a law office quite a bit in Elkton, Maryland, and I had a client several years ago. It's been like 6 years now, who approached me and said, and again, I'll tell you that all of this happened by accident because I am typically very much a stay in your lane type of person who does not, when I do what I do it well. And there seems to really be no point in stepping outside of that when you certainly don't need it financially.
This coming from the lawyer / mentalist / hypnotist, also / NFL agent.
Right. Again, what I do for pleasure,
you stay in your lane, but
passion
you check out other lanes.
I definitely have. The mystery arts have been a different exploration for me, a different track.
Right. / podcaster. Let's not forget that.
That's. I take it very seriously, but it's recreational for me. It's a great way to blow off steam and vent about things like what I'm. This will most likely turn into a rant at times. Let's put it this way. I do believe that I prefaced all of this by saying that you will know why not to do this. So I used to be a big football fan and religiously would watch games. I attend games, et cetera, et cetera. We've talked about in a previous episode how I'm a season ticket holder, how I'm I have 2 sets of tickets, and that's a whole other ordeal that'll hopefully be able to solve itself at some time in the next couple seasons. But a client approached me and said, "Hey, my son is playing on a full scholarship at a Division I school. If he wants, at the point in which it's appropriate, he was a freshman at the time, wants to go into the league, can you represent him?" And I said, "Probably, but there's probably some stuff I have to do." And this is kind of like shiny new toy sort of thing. Like the interest came because I had a big interest in the league. And I'm like, ooh, that sounds super cool.
Right. And you were asked to do it. Not, of course. You weren't thinking to yourself like, oh my goodness, I think I would be a great NFL agent. Somebody said, "Hey, would you represent my kid?" Oh shit. Well, yeah, let me look into that.
Yeah. And I think some of that comes from the enamor of what it appears to be from the outside and it connecting to something that I'm interested in, because I get a lot of calls requesting all day, every day, people requesting that I represent them for something that I have no interest in. I have no desire to take on. I have no desire to learn. I'd rather change my phone number than continue this conversation. All sorts of stuff. And it's stuff that isn't on my website. There's no indication from the outside that I do it, but we're in a small town and I've established such a strong web presence that when people type in lawyer near me, I come up first in the geography. So they call and ask about whatever random inane shit they're dealing with that I have no interest in. So I said, let me look into this. And I look into it. The process to become an NFL agent is somewhat daunting and arduous. One of the first gates to entry is that you're either an attorney, check. So I was past that, gate 1 right there. Or you have to have either an MBA or some other degrees and show like an 8-year period of negotiations, as part of your regular career.
Right.
And then there's some other qualification that a former player that spent at least 5 years in the league or something, like some number of years in the league, is also eligible.
Right, because you would have an understanding of how that entire process works.
The process. You've at least been, I think that 5 years is the number because that gets everybody through at least 2 contracts. The first one that there's not a whole lot of choice over. At one point in time there was, but since the 2011 CBA, collective bargaining agreement, all of the rookie money has been slotted based on draft choice or draft pick. So you're only freely open road negotiating that second contract.
Right.
You could negotiate terms and structure of the first contract, but not the dollar amount. The dollar amount is set and slotted. Like I could pull a chart and you could give me a number between 255 and I could tell you a player drafted in that position, their first contract will have a total value of X, and it'll just come from that chart. And it changes year to year because and it scales year to year. So does the rookie minimum, things like that. So I look into that. I see that that's, that box is checked. There, at the time that I did this, which was 2019.
So not that long ago.
No, not that long ago. I've only been doing this for about 5 years, and some of that disjointed with COVID,
Right.
which, let me tell you, my first full year as an NFL agent was in the midst of COVID. We'll get into that because my role in this has changed substantially over the years that I've been in here. So I want to say that the application fee was either $2,500 or $3,500, non-refundable U.S.
Right.
dollars, and you've got to provide an assload of information background-wise.
Right.
I want to say that the application was more extensive than my bar application.
Really?
Like all sorts of everything, like places that you've lived, shit about your credit, places that you've worked, all sorts of stuff, right? You got to submit and consent to a background check, which is no big deal. And this is all done in, I want to say, either a 10-day or a 2-week window in January or February. Like, you can't apply outside of this. Like, it's
Oh, so only a small amount of time you can actually do the
There's only a
application.
small amount of time you could do it, and you don't find out that you're allowed to take this test until sometime in June. So you just
Jesus.
sit radio silence for 6 months, and then you get an email that's like, "Hey, congratulations, you're not a shitbag. You have to come to Washington, D.C. for this." And some of this may have changed because I know that some of this stuff may have kind of gone virtual post-COVID or whatever. But at the
Right.
time that I did this, that's what I'm describing. You got to be in D.C. for 2 days. There's a 2-day, all-day seminar where basically the whole first day and half of the second day, first half of the second day is learning and being lectured to. And then the second half of day 2, you're taking this exam.
Right.
It was either a 60 or 80 question multiple choice exam where you are asked a bunch of questions about the salary cap, the collective bargaining agreement, all sorts of different scenarios. You know, Johnny plays 2 regular season games and then goes on injured reserve, and then he comes back from injured reserve and gets cut in week 13, and he wants an injury settlement. What's that worth? You know,
Right.
Shit like that. Shit that if you are not connected to the league, what I just said makes your head spin. Trust me, if you are connected to the league, it probably makes your head spin.
Head still spinning.
What is they have different terminology for what an earned season and an accrued season are. They mean different things. They calculate different things. Being on an active roster, being on an inactive but on the 53-man roster, injured reserve, practice squad, all this other crazy ass shit. You got to learn all this stuff. Now, it's an open book test, but the way that it works is that, I mentioned earlier that number hovers between 800 and 900, the number of agents that they have. And there's a certain amount that fall off every year. Once you're in, you have to have a player under contract. You can't go 3 consecutive seasons without having a player under contract.
So nobody can call themselves an NFL agent if they're not agenting any NFL players.
Correct. You can't just pay the fee every year because, so you take this test. It's a Scantron test that you'd think that you could just zip that Scantron through a reader and get a green light or a red light as you walk out the door. No. They scale that test so that they've determined, hey, we want 45 new agents this year. We want 60 new agents this year. We want 10 new agents this year. Whatever that number may be, they curve the test so that only that number get in. So
I hate
the pass rate on this test is traditionally in like the 25 to 30% range, not because of how difficult it is, but because of that scaling. You've got to be in that top whatever percent. They never tell you what that is.
I hate any kind of
test. Admit to this being the thing, but it is.
Right. I hate any kind of test where if I take it today and I get a score, I fail. If I take the exact same test on a completely different day, get the exact same score, I pass. That's dumb.
Yeah. Well, that's what this is.
Yeah.
So, You take that test in July, you don't find out till mid-September when you get an email that says, congratulations, you passed. I don't know what the other email looks like because I passed the first time.
Good job.
And then 41 minutes later,
probably says, ha, 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 good luck. Pass again.
41 minutes or so later, if I remember correctly, I get the email with the invoice for my first year as an agent, which is another $2,500 or $3,500. One of those numbers is one, the other is the other. I don't remember which.
So you pay for the application, that large amount.
And if they say, hey, you're a shitbag, we don't want to let you take this test, you just lost that amount of money.
Whatever it was. That's, yeah.
So then you have to be insured. Now, as an attorney, I have professional liability insurance. So I took the list of qualifications that they needed on the rider. I went to my insurance carrier and I said, hey, what does it take to add these things? And they say, I get a call back that basically starts with laughter, being like, they've got this shit so specific that you basically have to use their insurance agent. So that's another $1,500 or so.
Ugh.
So if you represent 0 players, it costs you about $4,000 a year to maintain this because you've got to renew both of those things every October.
Year. Right.
We haven't even gotten started talking about where the real money's spent.
No. What? Spent. Okay, yeah. I'm trying to figure out why people do this. So far, you have me questioning, why the fuck would anybody do this?
I'll give you no good reasons. I have promised no good reasons.
You know why? I think a lot of it comes from people watching Jerry Maguire.
A lot of it comes from people watching Jerry Maguire. I would say that is a big factor to it because what you don't see in any of that is that Johnny Football, somehow you managed to get in touch with him. Most of this we've done through social media in the early days. More recently, a lot of this comes in a more traditional sense of, hey, we're representing and have a great relationship with a player on this team. Who's next? Who's coming up through? Who can my guy connect me to? Who can my guy put in a good word for me to? So it's changed. And what we do in this continues to change. But the one element is this. And at the time that we're recording this, we're kind of right in the window where all of this shit happens. The college football season, we can talk to these guys whenever, but we can't sign them until they're finished with their collegiate career, which means if they play in a bowl game, like this year, my group has a player who played in the national championship game for Washington. We could not sign him officially until that game was over. Then it's a window of time between whenever that last day of, which is usually January-ish, early January. Some of the bowl games are at the end of December, but it's all early January.
Right.
They go train. They go train at a training facility so that they can jump farther and higher and run faster. And if you are still listening to this, you are interested enough in sports ball that you are familiar with the NFL Combine. NFL Combine, late February. If you've ever watched it or watched parts of it, these players are training to perform better in that 40-yard dash, broad jump, vertical jump, bench press, and a bunch of different other agility type drills, as well as position drills and position work that they do. So they are training to do all of that. And that'll happen either at the NFL Combine, at a pro day that their school puts on. And then the other thing that happens for most of these players, for all of the players that have a shot of actually making it to the league, they get selected and invited to what are called college all-star games. And Big Sexy seems to already be falling asleep from this. It is what it is. It is not, if you are not in it, if you are not interested in it,
it just makes me sound tired. Just all the things that they're doing, again, my understanding of the concept has all been, of course, movies and shit, TV series, ages representing players, but like, you haven't even gotten into the representation part of it yet.
No, not at all.
Let's keep going.
So all of that stuff that I just described there, the training for what I call the underwear Olympics, and if you've ever been to one, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
That is definitely
all of that costs money, and we pay for that. We front that money, and most of the time we're just putting it out there. It's not even a loan. It's not going to be paid back. And the average cost to represent a player that is going to be that is likely to be a draft pick is like $25,000 for that, to get them in that through that 10-week period of time.
So the agency pays for them to go through that train. Entire combine.
Correct. All of everything that goes into that. Yes.
Wow.
With no guarantee that the guy makes a team, no guarantee that the guy gets drafted, no guarantees whatsoever. You know, if my guy decides that he's going to spend that 10 weeks that we've sent him to go training in the morning, and then, you know, getting shit-faced and eating bonbons all night, and he shits the bed at his pro day, poof.
All that money gone.
Poof.
Now there's no contract binding that player to like terms of you can't shit the bed, you know what I mean? Like there's no.
Well, I'm not saying that stuff's not in the contract, but the likelihood of being able to get that money back from these players who have shot their best shot,
right,
and aren't going to be making that career, and now have to go sell life insurance or whatever the hell else they end up doing, or the running joke when you see a player that gets pulled up into, you know, and gets signed, like Joe Flacco, for example. In this most recent season, Joe Flacco, because of injuries to the Cleveland Browns quarterbacks, ended up getting signed, you know, in the fourth quarter of the season or whatever. He was sitting on a couch. For a guy that's not a veteran like him, the company line is, dude was checking people out at Best Buy last week, and now he's here in the league, type of thing. You know?
Yeah.
So the ability to get that money back in a scenario like that, just we don't even bother. It's not even a thing. You know, so because it's just not worth pursuing. It's kind of rip off the Band-Aid, move on into the next sort of thing. When I first got into this, I linked up with another agent who I've been working with since, continue to work with. He actually played for a period of time at the University of Delaware and wanted to go onto the other side of things. He was working in recruiting. He ended up being a coach there for a number of years after playing, and then wanted to flip to the player side. He and I randomly got connected through social media, and we ended up deciding to split the cost of a player that we were representing in that year's draft, which eventually turned into us working together pretty much exclusively, where neither of us after that first year ever signed a player solo. In that same year, I got lumped up into a group of other agents that have been doing this for a while. And keep in mind, we are not at a big time level. We are not representing guys that you will see drafted in the first round.
Yeah. Oh, so you got
rarely will you see us representing guys that are drafted on the second day, which is usually rounds 2, 3, and 4. Occasionally we'll get a guy that creeps into the second day, but not, you know, we're not talking about big time names. We're not talking about superstars, nothing like that.
No, you're not representing anybody who may be dating a celebrity singer or model.
I mean, not that we know of, not who you're talking about.
Well, no, I know. I'm not saying anybody in specific, but that does tend to be like a NFL player trajectory. When they reach a certain level of fame, suddenly they are paired with some other celebrity in another field, because they can be.
There are none on my radar at this point in time. So typically, most of these pro days are open to agents, and it's one of the best places to go network and meet with team scouts. So first couple of years, I was flying all over the country in March. I mean, my March was non-existent. I was literally like, and it wasn't fly here, fly home. It was like, I'm trying to remember this itinerary that got jacked up because of the world shutting down in mid-March of 2020. And this may not be accurate, but it's probably close enough. I had one leg of this itinerary that did happen, where I flew from Baltimore to Birmingham, Alabama, stayed in a hotel, went to a pro day at UAB. I think that either that same day or maybe the next morning, I got on a plane from Birmingham to Kansas City.
Okay.
I rented a car and I got a hotel room there. And the next morning I was in Lawrence, Kansas for the Kansas University Pro Day. I can't remember where I flew to after that and then home. And I was going to have about 5 days off before I was supposed to then fly into Nashville to go to Tennessee, Middle Tennessee in Murfreesboro. And then I would have gone from there to Cleveland. This part didn't happen because of the pandemic.
Because of COVID, right?
I was going from there to Cleveland. And then I was supposed to go from Cleveland to somewhere else and then come home.
Wow.
And you're not doing anything. Like, you're networking and you're schmoozing with people. But at the end of the day, I don't give a shit what I say to anybody. If my guy doesn't perform, he's not getting signed. It's that simple. Right. Like, it's nice to build these connections, but where the connections come in and the relationships that you build with these scouts is the ability to scroll through your phone when you're considering signing a player and saying, hey, you're still in the Southwest region, right? Or the Southeast region, or the mid words. Yeah. Some other region. Do you have notes on this guy? What do you think about this player? And get, the better that relationship, the more information of, hey, we like him. He's a draft pick. Hey, he's a mini camp invite. He's a whatever, and that helps you assess based on real data that matters, whether or not it's worth investing money into one of these players.
Now, as you were initially approached to represent somebody's son. First question, did you end up representing that kid?
No, that guy ended up not playing.
All right. Okay. But that got you into the field.
That got me into the field, right.
How do you find prospective players? Like, what's your method of discovery?
So I'll talk about when I first started, because it's changed. My involvement in this business has changed and evolved over the years. But in those early days, we would either show up to these all-star games, and if there were guys that jumped off and looked really great and somehow didn't have an agent, we'd try to meet with them. A lot of them we would link up with on social media, and we started trying to prospect and figure out who we could connect to and who we were interested in earlier and earlier. Like, there are guys that we've talked to since they were freshmen in college, and you try to maintain that relationship all the way through and hope that some big time agent doesn't swoop in at the last minute and drop a bag on them, which ultimately happens because they'll buy players. So we've lost numerous.
Anybody from high school? You heard any high school phenoms that you're like, okay, well, I mean, they're 4 years. Well, actually, maybe not, because you've only been in the game for about 5 years.
I haven't yet, right? Yeah, there's a guy that somebody tried to connect me to that's in high school that we haven't really bridged that yet, but he's still kind of on the radar. So yeah, a lot of it happened through social media. Now a lot of it is happening through other players.
It's that word of mouth factor, right?
It's the word of mouth factor. We had success with a running back from University of Alabama, Birmingham, who 2 years later helped us sign a wide receiver there. A lot of the players that we will represent help us get other players. And so that, that and the flying all over the place and all this other stuff is really how I started in this. And I got to realizing really quick that the juice isn't particularly worth the squeeze here. It's super
Right.
tough to project who's getting drafted. There was a period of time in which there was a huge backlog of players because of the pandemic and guys taking extra years, and draft classes where there's normally 1,000 to 1,200 players who will mark themselves as eligible for the draft. The 2021 or 2022 draft had like 3,500 players in that pool. So it was a super huge log jam. A lot of that has since cleared up. But, we kind of built stronger relationships with some of these other smaller agents and smaller agencies. And over the past 2 seasons have kind of linked up together where there's probably about 15 of us that kind of operate in tandem.
Oh, nice.
So
now we all can kind of pool your resources together, right?
Yeah,
as well?
we pull our resources, and it is, for me, I've kind of shifted out of that role where I'm flying all over the place and meeting players. And it's more, for me, my role is shifted into more of like when you buy a share of a racehorse. So I'm part of numerous big group text messages. One is the overlying network that we're part of, and then there's different breakout groups for when we sign a player, where basically, this is a guy that we're looking at. This is a guy that we can probably get. Here's what scouts are saying. This is what it's going to cost us. And then guys are basically, I'm in or I'm out. We can have as many as 12 or so players on one, or 12 or so agents on one guy.
Right.
So then, instead of paying $25,000, if there's 12 guys on it, you're paying $3,000 or whatever.
Right.
$2,000, $3,000, depending on what it all breaks down to. So, you're hedging a little bit. You're not risking as much, but if you're only paying a 12th, you're only getting a 12th when you get paid.
I said that's the part that I wanted to get into next. Was we've talked about the squeeze.
Yeah.
There has to be some juice to make it worthwhile for there to be over 800 agents in the industry. What's the juice?
I will say that statistically speaking, before we get into the juice, and I haven't looked at these statistics recently, but there's going to be a seminar coming up that I have to attend in mid-February that'll give me these numbers new and fresh. But somewhere in the range of 50 to 60% of those agents currently represent 0 players in the league.
Oh, wow.
Many of them got into it in some way that resembles how I got into it.
Right.
And then that didn't pan out. And then they decided that this was a wash for them. I got linked up with some people that encouraged me to just do it. And I was like, the guy that I'm doing this for isn't, you don't necessarily expect to pass that test with that ridiculous pass rate the first time.
Right.
I happened to. And so I ended up in it earlier than I anticipated, and I figured might as well figure this out while I'm here until my guy becomes, draft eligible, which he never really saw the field, transferred to a smaller school, and then
right.
We've kind of lost touch since then. So, that the juice comes way, way, way down the line, because if you're not starting with big name players, you're not necessarily starting with guys that get drafted the first year. Almost no agent that isn't part of a big agency where like the intern goes and then they make the intern eventually go take the test and become an agent. Outside of those types of people that are independent that come into it, I think it's like once every 5 years that a rookie agent gets a player drafted. Like it doesn't.
Oh, wow. Okay. Gotcha.
It takes a while. And sometimes, like we got players on teams the first year, but a lot of them were fringe players, practice squad players. They maybe had 2 or 3 active games, so they're not making a lot of money. And what we get paid is 3% of what they get paid.
Okay.
So
3%.
If a guy is on an active roster,
right.
If a guy's on an active roster, he's making $900,000 a year. So the math on that that's $27,000. So that's real
Right.
money. But again, we're often splitting that 5 ways, 10 ways, whatever,
Right.
depending on the player. I will say that this is the first year that I've brought in enough money from players on active rosters to roll that money into offsetting the cost of players in this year's draft.
Oh,
Not
wow,
all
okay.
of the players that I'm representing in this year's draft. I'm still very much behind the 8 ball. But we've got a really nice draft class this year. And I would say that probably the first year that I make what you would consider to be a traditional profit
Mm-hmm.
as an NFL agent is still about 2, maybe 3 years away.
Gotcha. So right now you're still in the hole.
Oh, I'm still very, very much in the hole. And, it's a build. It's a pipeline. I've got guys that some of these guys, you're representing. Because when you're not a big time agent, you don't have the clout to sign the bigger guys. You don't have the bankroll to sign the bigger guys.
Right.
You don't want to, without the level of experience that some of these big time agents have, you don't necessarily want to. I mean, some of these guys, first round draft picks, put a 0 behind that number that I said that it costs to represent a guy that might get drafted.
Right.
If you got a guy that's projected in the first round, you're spending $250,000 to get this guy in. And some of that is you advancing money that he's likely to get on endorsement deals that you'll never get back, and you may never get back. Right. There's a whole lot of hanging money out there, and I know that at the top, there's a lot of shady shit going on. There's a lot of players being given money that is coming from some shady ass loan company. We don't get involved in that, so I don't know too many of the details that surround that. But I know enough to know that some form of people taking advantage of players is happening. Again, I can't get into the specifics because we're not into that practice. But the roster grows more every year. And when you're representing guys that are kind of fringe guys that maybe they get drafted, maybe they get signed as an undrafted free agent, maybe they make a team, maybe they make a practice squad, they'll hang around a team for a year, 2 years on that practice squad, and then eventually it's their turn and they make it up. So even with an individual player, sometimes it takes 3 or 4 years until they're on an active roster for a good chunk of the year.
Right. Now, is there ever a scenario? I'm pretty sure there must be, but have you ever been approached by like one of the bigger agencies to come work for them?
I have not, but I haven't. I mean, I haven't been to a pro day since March of 2021, which would be where they kind of see who you are and who you're representing, and that
And none of your representees have made a big enough splash to put your group's name on the map, as it were.
Well, I mean, it's some of that, and some of it is these guys. Their perspective is that it's easier to just steal and scoop the player before that next contract,
right,
than to try to take me or some other guy on.
Have you? And I'm pretty sure. Have you had any of your players get headhunted by other bigger agencies?
Oh yeah. Both before we sign them and after we sign them, and you're constantly maintaining a relationship with these guys, warning them that this stuff is coming. What I've had these conversations with my partner is we've got to ruin the story for them. We've got to look like mind reading wizards, where we tell them, hey, be on the lookout because A, B, and C is going to happen. Because if you tell them that A, B, and C is going to happen, and then A, B, and C happens, you're a fucking wizard. Right.
That was they showcased that in Air, the Michael Jordan story.
Okay.
Yeah, where Matt Damon's character meets with Michael Jordan, and of course he's with Nike. This is for the shoe deal. He's with Nike at the time. Nike's small. He says, "Okay, look, here are how the other shoe deal guys are going to come at you," and he literally described each one, and then they showcased each one doing that. And I'm on that. See that, and that made me, oh man, you really do know this. You know this business better than than most. So I trust your word. I trust your viewpoint. Well, you are a mind reader, so that you should have a hand up in that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's worked out, but for some guys, if somebody's going to throw them an extra 20 grand,
right? Yeah, you can't be a big bank.
I don't know why are you walking away from somebody that you trust over 20 grand when you're 6 months away from making 900 grand a year?
Right.
That 20 only matters today, and then you got to deal with that shit bag.
Yeah, that's because they got rent due today.
Yeah,
they got car note due today. Their girlfriend is begging for that diamond ring today.
It's a rough business. It's the light at the end of the tunnel still hasn't even arrived, and I've been doing this for 5 years now. Again, like I said, that's full disclosure. I'm at least probably 2 to 3 seasons away from
profit,
the money that comes in exceeding the money that goes out in the same calendar year.
So step 1, spend a lot of money to apply to be an FL agent. Step 2, spend a whole bunch of money trying to acquire clients and do the aspect of it. Step 3, wait a while, profit.
Yeah.
That about accurate?
That is
So you plan on sticking with it? You're gonna see it through all the way till you start seeing some profit?
Oh, good Lord. I tell myself no every time this time of year, every year this time of year, every year after the draft. I tell myself no. As players get cut and moved to other teams in the summer months, I tell myself no. And then when that renewal invoice comes in mid-September, I click the link, I put my credit card information in, I update my roster, I click submit, and then I renew for another year.
Well, good.
Look, so consistent with it, I'll say no. I'm out.
Yeah.
This is my last year.
So right now I say no, last year until next year. So, but I as a mind reader, I've been working with you for quite some time now. I think I now have developed, garnered some of that ability. I say this is 2024. I say 2026. You're going to stumble across something and it's going to blow up.
I'm writing that down. I'm going to hold you to it.
Yeah, 2026. Yeah, you'll start to see the workings in late 2025. You'll start to hear the rumblings, and you'll move on it, and then this year, 2026, you'll be like, "Holy shit! All right, this is finally something I don't lead with this, but I definitely mention it every time.
We'll see.
Yeah. Fingers crossed, fingers and toes, and if I could, my nose.
Yeah, that would look weird.
Yeah, you can't really cross it.
Yeah, we haven't even really gotten into the representing college players for name, image, likeness stuff, which is a whole other heartache.
Right,
I don't know that I want to.
That information not recently, but it changed after a while.
Yeah.
Did you sign up after that change went down?
Before that.
Okay.
Yeah. You couldn't buy, when I signed up and I became an agent, you couldn't buy a player a cup of coffee ethically.
That's insane.
Now like all the rules are off. You can take a guy out to dinner. You can, wine and dine him, schmooze him, whatever. So I've got one of the wide receivers on the Raiders.
Nice.
A running back with Carolina. Cornerback, defensive back with the Vikings. Active guys from this past season. We got a bunch of guys that kind of bounced up and down and are a part of the what are they calling it now? The XFL and the USFL merged. I think it's called the UFL. That's going to start in March.
The XFL.
Well, it's not the XFL anymore.
No, not the X, the UX.
Yeah.
The UXFL, the UX.
Like, the UXFL, the UX. Whatever it is. The ZooFL.
The ZooFL.
Whatever it is. The ZooFL. Whatever it is. The ZooFL. Whatever it is. The ZooFL. Whatever it is. The ZooFL. Whatever it is. The ZooFL. Whatever it is. And there, it's part of the thing that you want to see when you get involved in this, which takes so long to have actually happen, is you want to watch these guys that you represent on the field.
The flux.
And, it takes so long for that to happen, like it takes so long for guys to get from the practice squad to the active roster to actually playing in games.
Do you do fantasy football?
No, I haven't done fantasy football since I started law school.
I wonder how many NFL agents do fantasy football and put their players on their roster on their fantasy football league, or worse, don't.
That's a good question. Again, I have not.
Yeah, you don't play. Yeah.
It's just another thing that is, oh God, that takes so much time to do and do right that I have not. I
got into fantasy football right as it seemed like the free agency boom started, when players are really moving around a whole bunch versus when like I really haven't really paid enough a lot of attention to football since it seems like there's no more dynasty teams. You know what I mean? There's no more there's no more players on a roster who stay on the team for a long, long time.
Right.
People move around all the time now. I can't keep track. I'm a diehard Raider fan, right? Win, lose, or tie, Raider fan till I die. I can't tell you who's who. I don't know anymore. I don't follow it that much. I know, that we have mediocre seasons. Part of that might also be because the Raiders have mediocre seasons that I don't follow. I'm not as enthusiastic about it as some of my other friends are. Shout out to all my Raider Nation people, Raiders. I wish that I remember having that desire and that drive to, sport a certain jersey. Like, I wouldn't even know what jersey to buy now, right? Because as soon as you buy a jersey, that player's gone. You get these marquee players, they make these jerseys, they sell these jerseys for hundreds of dollars, and then next season that player's on another team. Like, that's just dumb to me. But, hopefully, again, 2026, you will get somehow you'll stumble across a player and he'll shine, and won't be a first draft pick, but he'll make the lineup.
So the guy that we represent this year, all right. So there's two things to look at. One of them is the NFL Combine, and then the other is the NFL Draft. So the Combine is the last weekend of February / first weekend of March. It actually runs from the 29th through the 3rd this year. I just looked it up. And then the Draft is the last weekend of April. Specifically, one of the players that we represent, who I would say has the highest chance of being an earlier draft pick, is a tight end. The tight ends do their combine stuff on Friday, March 1st. I have no idea if this episode will or will not air before that, but if it does, tune into the combine. His name is Devin Culp, Culp. He is a tight end from Washington. He is the guy that was in the national championship game. You will probably hear his name called not on the first day of the draft, because that's just the first round, but it's a good possibility that he gets his name called on day 2, unless he, most likely, if not by
day 3, day 4.
Yeah, no, just 3.
Just day 3. I don't know how long the draft lasts. I don't know. I mean, because you were in Vegas during Scoop Fest for the draft.
Correct. Yeah. So I flew in for day 2. What a nightmare that was. It took us, because we all kind of planned it so that our flights would come in around the same time, give or take an hour of each other, and got into a limo to go from the airport to the Flamingo, which is usually a 10-minute jaunt. That took us 2+ hours.
Right. Jesus. That's dumb.
Which pushed me time frame wise to impossible to get to the Orleans at the time. That's why I didn't participate in the variety show that I was supposed to participate in.
Right.
And so we were there for all of day 2 and day 3 of the draft. We had a suite at the Flamingo. We had a bunch of people in that, all the TVs on, laptops open, phone calls. We had if there were 10 guys in that room, there were 30 cell phones. It was crazy time. It was a war room, so to speak. That first evening we had Smoothini of AGT fame come in and do a little performance for us. Because I was doing some booking stuff for him at the time. Still technically do. He's just taking some time off.
Right.
But I found that kind of putting together the agent skill set parlays very well into representing entertainers. So I've kind of over the past couple of years been working toward carving that out as kind of an offshoot leg of the same agency, where we're also taking on entertainment clients, and trying to expand that.
See, that's what I need. I need an agency to take me on as an entertainer, to push me to create more.
Yeah.
If I had an agency behind me to know that I can get out there and get stuff done and presented, it would definitely move me to lean into my creativity more. We'll see.
So that's the adventure. That's
NFL agent.
If I haven't given you enough reasons to not do it, ask me questions and I will give you more reasons. I'm happy to do it.
What is it you still love about it?
I'll let you know. No, nothing pleases me more than knowing that not only is that I have a player that's going to be on an active roster, but that he is part of the game plan.
Nice.
And being able to watch for him to play. My player that is now Christian Wilkerson, who's a wide receiver for the Raiders, at the time was on the Patriots. It was so fun to sit. I was in the Caesars Vegas sportsbook watching him play, hauling down 2 or 3 touchdowns in a game. It was the most fun.
Nice. It's those moments
those moments.
Right.
So again, your projection of things being great come 2026 wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Because, the guys that I've had, some of them, like Wilkerson was a guy that I represented in the very first year, and he's still there in the league hanging on.
Nice.
Which a lot of guys wash out first year,
Right. And now he's playing for the Raiders, so he's going to do big things.
So, he's progressively gotten more and more involved over the past couple of years, and then more and more people coming in. So it's a pipeline. It's a progression. It's at times fun, but at more times a pain.
Cool deal. Well, good. That answers some of our listeners' questions. I hope that takes care of some of the curiosity behind your NFL agency. And again, listeners, if you have any questions, go ahead and hit us up at bigsexynomad@gmail.com. We'll be happy to answer those for you, and get you some answers of why you want to do something different, why you want to go a different route. But if you have any inquiries and you really considering being an NFL agent, hit us up as well. Judgmental can definitely give you a walk down, a step-by-step walk down on what you can expect. And then you can make an educated decision versus going haphazard. And if you got the bankroll to do it, consider becoming a Patreon member. Go ahead and sign up to be a Patreon member at bullwiththebutthole.com. I guarantee we'll give you a bunch of stuff for your support. We definitely appreciate that. And and you never know, your player may become a celebrity, but you can always keep him in check, because it is hard to look at a celebrity going. Imagine a celebrity just, on the toilet taking a massive dump, especially if you represent that celebrity.
Yeah. I'll tell you right now, the cost of that Patreon is nowhere near the cost of representing an NFL player that may or may not even make a team.
There you go. See? Value. That's what we're offering here at Big Sexy Digital Nomad, value. Awesome. Well, this is the bank episode. We don't know when it's released, so we don't have any tour dates or show dates to talk about. This will drop at some point in time. We don't know, but we appreciate y'all listening. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, all the things. Tell friends and family about Big Sexy Digital Nomad. Let's grow our community. Shoot over to Patreon. Again, even if you don't do a paid tier, if they do allow free tiers, so you can at least still be a part of the community. And we do try to release things on Patreon for everybody, not just for the paid tiers, because we really want to grow up our sexy world travelers and keep you all invested in the podcast and give you information. If there's anything about travel or anything like that you want to know about, you have any questions about, or want to hear stories about, hit us up. Let us know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, if there's nothing else in the meantime, safe travels.
Safe travels.